You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
So as an 18-year-old, Bruce, did you have any idea of the inner workings of the wrestling business, even with your father in the industry?
A little bit. You know, being around the business as long as I did, of course, you pretty much kind of, you knew what was going on. But it's kind of interesting. Back in that era, ring announcers were not allowed in the dressing room. That was just a rule. They had a lot of interesting rules, and one of which was ring announcers were not allowed in the dressing room, because normally the ring announcer was a guy who was local. They hired a local guy to be the ring announcer, so they didn't necessarily want to reveal the truth to him. So the ring announcer usually hung out in the box office, and the promoter would go and get, the weights and stuff like that, and tell him, who everybody was from and things like that. So when I first started working at the wrestling office, I was, typing the payoffs, and Dusty Rhodes was the booker at that time, and Gary Briscoe was the assistant booker at that time, and I was, typing and one of the first things that Duke Kiwanuka taught me on that very first day was a word called, he didn't say kayfabe, he said confidentiality. He says confidentiality is very important in this business. And he says, because one of the reasons is, you're going to be typing up the payoffs that we're going to be giving you. He says, don't be telling the other wrestlers what the other ones are making. So it was important, that that's, because I didn't reveal the secrets of the magic tricks. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they trusted me to do that in the office, because they knew that I would not reveal, and I would, the confidentiality of the office. But I was not allowed in the dressing room back then. And in fact, I worked in the wrestling office for probably 2-3 years before I worked my way into the dressing room. I wasn't allowed, and they never invited me into the dressing room. I sort of had to work my way into the dressing room. But that's just the way the business was back then. It was very strict, very strictly protected, and I didn't understand it back then. I resented it to an extent because I was young, but now I understand, and I respect the fact that the business was so protected back then. I wish the business was as protected now as it was back then. But times change.
This is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We're talking to NWA President Bruce Tharpe. Bruce, growing up as you did in the wrestling industry, what did the NWA mean to you as a young person aspiring to get into the business?
Fantastic question, and I really, appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to addressing that. The NWA goes back to 1948, and my father knew Sam Muchnick, so I literally am a throwback to the old NWA, and I had been out of the wrestling profession for a while since I had, become an attorney, been a practicing attorney for 26 years, and didn't really plan on getting back into the wrestling profession. Found myself back in promoting, became part of the NWA, and then the opportunity came along, became president, and the rest is history. But I am a throwback to the old NWA, and because of my father, because of his relationships and associations with Eddie Graham, guys like Sam Muchnick, Lou Thesz, Jack Briscoe, I have a lot of respect for the National Wrestling Alliance, and that's one of the reasons why I'm just really taking it seriously in terms of trying to expand the brand worldwide and trying to do the best I can to restore the National Wrestling Alliance to the position of prominence that it once held. And you're right, it's not 1984 again, and it'll never be 1984 again, but we're looking towards the past. We're looking towards the future, and it just may well be that the future of the National Wrestling Alliance is better than 1984. We have to be optimistic about the future, and I'm working very hard, doing everything I can to get the NWA in places that it's going to be seen. We're in New Japan. We've been over in Japan now for almost 2 years, and that's been a great opportunity for us. Our next step, obviously, is television. I'm not telling anybody that we've got a television deal yet because we don't, but we are actively seeking a television deal, a broadcast partner because that's the next step for the National Wrestling Alliance. We need to expose to the world who we are, what our product is, and who our wrestlers are, who our best matches are from some of the best promotions. We've got some of the greatest promotions, in the country, from Smoky Mountain Wrestling, NWA Smoky Mountain in Kingsport, Tennessee, to Southern All-Star Wrestling out of Nashville, to Branded Outlaw Wrestling in San Antonio. We've got tremendous promotions all over the country. We've got promotions in Australia. We've got promotions in England. We've been contacted by promoters all over the world that are interested in the NWA. We've got promoters in Hong Kong and Singapore and Taiwan and mainland China that have seen what we've been doing with New Japan, that are interested in the National Wrestling Alliance. They've seen Rob Conway, Iron Man Rob Conway, in the ring. They like our style of wrestling. So, I think that the NWA style is catching on. It fits in quite well with the New Japan style of wrestling. And the next step is some sort of a television vehicle, whether it be on a broadcast network or whether it's going to be on our website. And in fact, the more I travel around the world, the more that I realize that perhaps that's where the future of television is on the World Wide Web, because literally we have wrestling fans from all over the world that are contacting us, talking about the National Wrestling Alliance, that want to see our product. And really, that's the only way that you're going to be able to do it, is put it on the World Wide Web so your pro group can be seen all around the world. So those are some of the things that we've got in mind, for 2015 for the National Wrestling Alliance.
Well, Bruce, I have a ton of questions still for you, but I'm going to kick it off to one of your champions, the Morningstar Will Huckabee, the NWA Continental Champion. See if he can give us an inside perspective of the National Wrestling Alliance. Will?
Yeah, Mr. Tharpe. Once again, thank you for being on the show. We really do appreciate it.
Our pleasure, man. Shoot.
Okay, yeah. Before we get to the really, really good stuff, because a lot of our listeners, and actually I didn't even know this, tell us about, you actually have experience in wrestling besides being an announcer and stuff. Of course, I had to do my research and everything, and I found out that at one point in time, the Honorable Bruce Tharpe actually wrestled in the ring underneath the mask. Would you like to tell us about your experiences?
Sure. No problem. Absolutely. Will, you and I can relate, because once you get wrestling in your blood, once you really love this profession, once you really get this, you want to experience every aspect of it. I'm a student of the business, and I want to learn. I want to know everything about it if I can, because I think that makes me a better promoter. And, I worked in a wrestling office. I announced wrestling. I did commentary with Gordon Soley. I refereed with some of the greatest wrestlers in the world, traveled around, been in Japan, 1982, announced, with Giant Baba. But I wanted to experience what it felt like to actually be in the ring. I wanted to experience what it felt like to make the people stand up and sit down and react by a movement of your body. That is so cool to be able to do that. To be able to just, even as if you're a referee, okay, for example, and the heel pulls the hair, and the referee doesn't see it, and he just looks to the crowd with a quizzical look on his face. It pantomimes, did he pull his hair? And if you can make that entire section of audience stand up and say, yeah, he pulled his hair, that is just an amazing feeling, to be able to use psychology to make people react like that. And I wanted to feel what that felt like. I wanted to know what it felt like to take a bump. I wanted to know what it felt like to bleed, and experienced all of that. I remember one of my matches, I took a hard kick. I wrestled in Mexico primarily. I trained in Mexico primarily. Wrestled a little bit in Texas. Didn't wrestle that much, okay, but I did wrestle a little bit, enough to get experience in the ring. So I know what it's like to be in there. And I know what it's like to take a hard shot to the gut. I remember one time I took a hard kick to my gut, and I couldn't catch my breath after that. And I'm like, man, I'm blown up. What's the deal here? And I didn't realize that I had 3 broken ribs. They broke, and in fact, I had X-rays done years later for another reason in the emergency room, and they asked me, "Do you have 3 broken ribs?" Yeah, I guess so. They said, well, they never healed properly, So, I know what it feels like to be in the ring, and I did that because I just wanted to know what that experience was like, because I wanted to bring that experience to the table, and yeah, so I do have wrestling experience myself, so that's a little bit about my background.